Today, I'm going to share with you the 10 steps that it took to turn my idea into a product that can be sold. And I'm going to share with you how you can do the same. There's going to be times during this process that you're going to have to hire something out. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you where you can find these people, generally how much that should cost, but it's so critical that you try and do as much of this as you can. When it comes to hiring a professional, the more information that you can give them, the more time you're going to save, the more money you're going to save, and overall you're just going to get a lot higher quality work back from them. So let's begin. Step number 1, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? Where we live, it gets so hot in the summers, and if you leave your chapstick in the car, it doesn't take anything for it to melt. We were trying to figure out how can we keep our chapstick accessible while it's in the car while also keeping it from melting. I really like to start in ChatGPT because this is a great place where you can just ask it all kinds of questions about the problem you're trying to solve, and it will give you really good practical solutions that are great for inspiring the rest of your search. We're going to head over to Google and we're actually going to ask it the same question. Now you can go through Google, but I've actually found a lot quicker and a much more effective way of looking for products is through images. Depending on the product, I usually like to spend a few hours looking through these. 1, you don't want to reinvent something that already exists. 2, this is a really great place to see market potential. Here's one of our potential competitors, and they're selling their product for $9 and they're selling about $900 a month. Since this is on Amazon, you can assume they're making about 20% profit. That's about $1,700. But as you can see, not everyone is moving that high of volume. I'm going to do some more research and I'm going to buy some of the products that I think are the most interesting, and we'll go from there. Quick side note, now that we're working on our prototype, this would be a good time to get an NDA. I just Googled NDA form, and there are tons of law firms that have these free NDA templates that you can fill out for the state that you're in. You just have to fill out their form and then sign up with your email, and you're good to go. So I've been playing with the competition for a few weeks now, and they're pretty cool, but I did find some ways that they could be improved. Now this one, for instance, is a 3D printed car mount, which I loved how accessible it made my chapstick. However, it didn't seem to help my melting problem. Now this one did help my melting problem, but because it was a sleeve, it was hard to get in and out, so it wasn't as accessible. Now this one was super cool. It looks good, it insulates good, but the problem is it has a screw cap, which made it hard to get my chapstick in and out when I was driving. So my thought was, why not take all 3 and bring them all together? So the cool thing about this is we've got the convenience of having our chapstick super accessible. It's lined and insulated as a heat barrier, and then it easily attaches to your car. Let's talk about how you can prototype your ideas. The best way is to find existing products and then just modify them. Take them apart, reassemble them, add pieces that you feel like would add value. And for unique prototypes, you can either use 3D printing or you can actually mold them in clay. I would actually start hand sketching that prototype and then adding dimensions to it, because this will be super helpful when it comes to prepping for manufacturing. But before we go to prepping for manufacturing, we need to go to the next step, branding. In this step, we're going to come out with 4 things: your name, your logo, your brand colors, and your brand font. And these make up something called your brand package. First, we're going to ask ChatGPT for some suggestions on a name. Now, I've had clients that spend months on this, but the truth is, as long as it explains what your product or service does for the customer, you're going to do great. Play with these names for a while, maybe add a few of your own. Then, when you have a few that you like, we're going to head over to the Trademark database and make sure none of them have already been taken. So we're just going to Google Trademark database, go down to search our Trademark database, basic search, and I like the name Chill Chat. So it looks like this was trademarked at one point, but it's been canceled, and it has been canceled since 2017. Now we're going to take this name and turn it into a logo. We're going to head over to Google and we're going to type in logo maker, and there are tons of these that you can use, but we're actually going to go to the Adobe version and we're going to go to create now. It's just going to ask us some information. Ours is a product-based business, and the name that I chose was Chill Chat, and we're going to skip the slogan for now. I really like how bold looks. We're going to look up an icon for cold. We've got this one selected. So now it's going to give us a ton of options that we can use for inspiration, or Or if there's one that we really like, we'll just use that. I actually really like kind of the more basic ones. So we're gonna pick this one. Now we can play with the colors. It'll give us different options for font. All right, so I like this one. So we're just gonna hit download. Let's say you've looked through the logos, but none of them really spoke to you. You have a couple options here. You can, one, create your own, and I've taken you to a website called Canva. This is my personal favorite because it's very easy to pick up. Another option is you can just hire someone else to do it. For this, we're gonna go to a website called Fiverr. You can also go to Upwork, and I typed in logo designer. So let's see what our options are here. Let's check this one out. One thing to note is the price that we see is their lowest possible price. There's actually 3 different versions that each seller will offer. In order to figure out what their real price is, you're just gonna have to contact them. In this box, we're gonna explain what our product is and show some pictures of the prototype so they have more information to go off of. It's important to note, if you do decide to go this route, also ask them if they can include colors and complementary fonts to your logo. This goes into something called the brand kit. So I'm gonna use Canva to show you what that is. Now your brand kit is going to consist of your logo, 5 or more colors that you're going to use for all of your content, and a complementary font that you feel like works good with your brand. When it comes to finding a good combination of colors and fonts, Canva is a great resource because they have so many different fonts that you can play with. If this is something that you don't feel like you quite have the eye for, you can just go back to Fiverr and have someone set up a brand kit. Expect to pay somewhere between $60 and $100, depending if you already have your logo. Now that we have our brand package and our prototype, we're ready to start step 5, prepping for manufacturing. In this step, we're going to come out with your CAD files. So CAD stands for computer aided design, and essentially this is your prototype modeled up on the computer, and this model acts as a blueprint for different types of manufacturing equipment to read. In theory, you could learn how to do your own CAD modeling, but I would recommend that you go to a professional for this one. 1, that would take a lot of time, and 2, your part's probably going to need to be modified to be manufactured cheaper and easier. This is a process called design for manufacturing. So who does this and where can you find them? Traditionally, this is something a mechanical engineer would do. One with manufacturing experience or with design experience. You can find them at product design firms, you can Google them, or we can use Fiverr again. So let's go through some of the pros and the cons of each one, starting with a product design firm. Now, these guys are going to do amazing work, they're going to communicate with you very well, and they're going to have some awesome connections later down the road. But the problem is, they can be very expensive. So I got a quote, and it was $2,500 for the CAD files and to go through all the iterations. Now, that is a good price, but compared to our next option, it's a little high. Let's talk freelance engineers. That's actually how I got started in this. I'm a mechanical engineer that's been helping people develop products and businesses for the last 3 years. If that's something that you're interested in, go to the description below and send me a message. If you came to me with this prototype and a very clear idea of how it needed to function, I would have charged somewhere between $400 and $600, depending on the work that you had put in before that. And that would have included all the CAD files that you would have needed to go to manufacturing. Now, if you didn't have a prototype and you didn't have a clear expectation of what it needed to do, that would have been probably 2 or 3 times as much. Some of the pros with going with a freelancer like me is it's gonna be a little bit faster than going with a bigger company. It's gonna be a little bit cheaper, and you're also gonna have good one-on-one communication. Some of the cons is it's actually still not the cheapest of all of our options. Now let's talk about your third option, which is to contact a professional over Fiverr or Upwork. Now, this can be a great option if you know exactly what your product needs to be and how it needs to function. And you can communicate that very clearly with drawings and pictures that you can send. If you don't, this is a bit of a gamble. When you hire someone over Fiverr or Upwork, generally speaking, they're from a different country. It's a little bit of a communication barrier. Because of that, it's really hard to iterate on designs. Some of the pros is this is by far your cheapest option, and it's going to be very quick. I did go on Fiverr and I got some quotes anywhere from $120 to $300. In our case, I'm the engineer on the project, so I'm just gonna draw up all the CAD and design it for manufacturing. Now that we have all of our CAD files and our brand kit, we are ready to go to manufacturing. But before we do that, we're gonna go into step 6, which is product validation. In this step, we're gonna talk about how you can test your product before you commit to manufacturing. And to answer the question, does this have the potential to make money? First, we're gonna talk about something called a medium production run. So a medium production run is when you can manufacture your product and then sell it in places like Etsy or at farmers markets. But our goal here is not to make money, but really to start to get an idea of who is our target audience and how much are they willing to pay for our product. So we're gonna head over to the computer again to look at some numbers. Right now it costs about $4.65 to produce a prototype that I can sell. Etsy is this cool place where you can create crafts and then sell them to other people online through the Etsy platform. I took the pictures for my Etsy listing, and I'd recommend you do the same thing. Your prototype is not gonna look as good as the final model, and there's no point in paying for pictures twice. Plus, we don't expect amazing results from Etsy. We just wanna have something to put on there. I've been selling Etsy for a couple weeks now for $13.95. You're gonna see a lot of fees on here that you might not be familiar with if you've never sold something online, but these are pretty standard. If you do the math, we actually lost $1.28 per each sale. But I'm not actually worried about this because there's a lot of things that we can do to improve our listing, plus we can adjust the price. So I'd say this is a pretty successful trial run. Another thing that we tried was a farmer's market booth. My goal here was to learn more about my target audience and what they would pay for our product. I was able to sell 35 units at this event, and that led to $155 profit. It seemed like the most interest was people between the ages 18 and 30. This isn't definitive, but this is a good place to start. Let's talk crowdfunding campaigns. There's a few things they don't usually tell you. 1, 3/4 of your audience is going to be males ages 25 to 30. 2, in order to get these pledges, you have to drive traffic to your listing, and this happens with paid advertising. 3, you need high quality images to do well. And this is pretty difficult if you don't have your product yet. But that being said, if your product looks like what you're seeing on the platform, this could be a good option for you. So another thing that I've done is I've actually gone to places that I know would sell my product, and then I set up some kind of discount with them where if they pre-order the product, I'll give them a steep discount. And this is great because this can actually help pay for a lot of your manufacturing costs. So, and we feel good about our prototype, we have our branding package, and we have our CAD files. We're ready for manufacturing. Essentially, you have 3 different options for manufacturing. 1, you can get your product manufactured domestically. 2, you can do it internationally. Or 3, you can go through a product development company. If you're new to this process, I would actually strongly recommend that you go with option number 3. This is because you probably don't know where to start or what a fair price might be. And these guys are amazing for getting the best price and holding your hand through the whole process. Generally, they will be about 20 to 30% more expensive than if you were to go with an overseas manufacturer, but that is totally worth it. Now, if you'd like to go domestically, I would actually strongly recommend that you use your engineer that you developed your product with to help communicate with the manufacturers. And if you don't want to do this, you can actually just go to websites like Xometry or Proto Labs, and you can just upload your CAD file to them, and then they can actually give you instantaneous quotes. And these are cool because you can do prototype quotes, so you can do 1 or 10, and they'll actually work with you to find manufacturers here or overseas. Now, onto our last option, which is to go overseas with websites like Alibaba. This is the cheapest option, but it may be difficult to navigate. So in our case, I'm just going to show you kind of what the process looks like. Here we are at Alibaba, and I've typed in custom plastic piece because that's essentially what our part is. Another cool feature, you can actually take a picture of your prototype upload it here, and then it will connect you with manufacturers that it thinks is similar to your prototype. Now, you can see some custom plastic pieces, and I want to note something. So it says injection molding right here. Now that's the manufacturing process they use to make these pieces. You can contact the supplier. So I already messaged them, and I'm going to show you what the conversation looks like. The first thing is they're going to send you this initial message, and they're going to ask you for your CAD file and then some questions about your product, like what material, polish of the mold. Then they ask if there's additional information. In our case, I just said no, I just want a quote. You don't have to, but when they ask what it's for, I don't usually like to tell them, just in case one of my competitors finds this same factory. I don't want them to know exactly what the part is and make it easier for them to knock me off. Here's our quote. If I break it down, they're charging us $677 for the mold. You're only going to pay to have the mold made the first time. How much it costs per piece, and then how much it costs to ship it to you. If I was to accept this quote, they would direct me to an invoice. I would pay that invoice, and then in a few weeks, they would send me some of the first models of the mold, and I could inspect it and see if that was up to my standard. All right, so now that we have our sample product, it's time to get our photos done. I've been burned on photos more than any step in the whole innovation process, so I'm gonna share with you 3 tips so that you won't make the same mistakes. One is to get a collection of reference photos that you can show to your photographer. This way you can give them a clear direction on what you're thinking for the product. 2, try and take those pictures yourself. It'll just give you more understanding, and it'll put you in a place where you can communicate a little better to your photographer. And 3, make sure you get an actual product photographer. These guys are going to be a little more expensive, but I promise you, it is going to be cheaper than paying for multiple normal photographers. A good place to find these people is you can go on Google, and actually if you go to Facebook and look up local photography groups, usually you can find one there. Expect to pay anywhere between $400 and $800 for this. When it comes to video, you're going to employ those same tactics, except when it comes to the price, you're going to be paying about twice that. So expect between $800 and $1,600. Now, you can also go to Fiverr, which is going to be cheaper, but I've actually never had a successful experience on there with photos, so do it at your own risk. Now, while the photos are being taken, we're going to go to Google and we're going to get your barcode. So we're going to go to GS1 and then we're going to click Get a Barcode. Now, you're just going to need a single one for here. All you have to do is enter your brand name, a description about your product, add to cart, and then you're just going to purchase it. And from here, they're going to give you a photo that you can download, and we're going to be using that photo in the next couple steps. Now that we have our photos and our barcode, it's time to get started on package design. First, we're going to go to Alibaba to see what packaging will work for our product. Second, we'll go to Fiverr and hire a packaging designer. You're going to need to give them your brand kit, your professional photos, your barcode, your box size, and any information that you want to be on your packaging. Once we have this design, we'll go back to Alibaba to do the same thing we did with our product. Depending on if you're going to use a bag or a box, expect to pay anywhere between 20 cents and $1.50. While this is happening, we're going to go get our instructions done. Now, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw what you think your instructions should look like. This includes pictures and the words that go with them. Next, you're going to contact your professional on Fiverr, and then you're going to share with them those pictures and your brand kit. Expect to pay somewhere between $100 and $200. Now, you can just have this printed locally if you plan on packaging the product yourself. That way you'll save a lot on shipping, or you can actually contact your product or your packaging factory and ask them for recommendations. That way you can have all 3 shipped to one location, have it packaged, and then shipped to you. This will cost a little extra. Expect it to be somewhere between 20 and 80 cents. Now that we got all this coordinated, it's time for step 9, which is legal work. This could have been done earlier in the process, but I chose to put it later because I don't want you to have to spend all this money until you're totally committed to your product. First thing we're going to do is we're going to file for an LLC. Now, an LLC stands for a limited liability company. What this does is it basically separates you from the business legally. So if there's a problem with your product, someone can't sue you, they will sue your business. And this will also give you something that's called an EIN. Now, your EIN number number is required if you're going to sell in places like Amazon or Shopify. When you file your LLC, you can either file it with an accountant, or there's a lot of good online resources that will help you do it. Expect to pay about $100. Anything more than $150 is probably a scam. Next, we're going to talk about your patent. Now, if your product is totally original, this would be a great option for you. If it's just a slightly modified version of something that already exists, this may not be an expense that's worth it. So to totally know, you need to go to a patent attorney, and they'll give you good advice on if this is patentable or not. If it is, you're going to file for something that's called a provisional patent. Now, this patent protects you for a year, and it should cost between $2,000 and $6,000. Now, that price is going to be lower if you put in more work with your patent attorney. So if you really understand your product and you can clearly define what's different about this and write it up and give it to your patent attorney, they're going to give you a lot better price because that's less work that they have to do. You're going to give that trademark to your same patent attorney, they'll bundle it with your patent, and you should be expecting to pay $800 to $1,000. We've got our legal work, our product is almost here. Now it's time to talk about how are we going to sell this thing. There are a lot of options when it comes to selling, but we're going to focus on selling online, primarily through Amazon or through your website. If you're new to selling, I'd actually recommend that you start with Amazon. This is because you have everything you need to create a good competitive listing on their platform. 2, their advertising is very effective and very easy to navigate. 3, because they offer something that's called remote fulfillment. This is when you ship them your products and they'll fulfill it for you at a discounted rate. Amazon does charge a 15% referral fee, but before you're like, that's garbage, I'm not doing that, I'm gonna give you an example. So I sell a product that's similar in size to the Chill Chap, and I sell it for $9.95. They only charge me $3.67 to fulfill my orders. That includes the referral fee. This is way cheaper than the $4.50 that I pay to ship the product directly to consumers myself. So now let's talk about the website. When we started, you were probably thinking that you needed to create a website to sell your product. But I need you to think, how are people going to find your website? When I search on Google, there's over 1 million search terms every single time I search it. And if you just create a website out of scratch, you're going to be pretty close to the bottom of that. And in order to rank on Google naturally, that's going to take months to years, a lot of time and a lot of money, which it can be worth it. But if you're just starting out, this is not your quickest way to get sales. You can advertise your listing on websites like Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, but this is pretty expensive and it takes a lot of work to get the communication right between your website and their platform. If you still want to set up a website, I actually recommend that you do a landing page. Now, a landing page is like a website in the fact that you do have a URL that you can send people to, but rather than having all the extra features, it's just one page. And it'll explain your product, it'll show some pictures, maybe you'll have a video on there, and maybe you can put your story on the bottom explaining how you developed this idea. I recommend you build this using MailChimp's free landing page builder and then integrating Square payments into this. This is because you're only going to be paying a transaction fee for each sale. Then you can go to Fiverr and have someone set this up for $200 to $400. This is opposed to creating your own website, which is going to cost $2,000 to $4,000, as well as $40 each month. Now guys, we haven't even scratched the surface of all the ways and places that you can sell your product. Let's sum this all up. In total, this project cost me $3,260. I chose not to do the legal work because a return on investment isn't going to be high enough to justify that cost. I've spent 85 to 100 hours of my own time, and from the initial idea to receiving our production run was 22 weeks. Our final cost per part was $1.56. That includes everything that goes into our product, our packaging, and our instructions shipped to me. Currently on Amazon, our referral fee and shipping cost is $5.17. We're still figuring out what advertising is, but it's going to come out to pretty close to $5. That leaves us a little over $2.50 profit for each part. Now, our potential for this part is somewhere between 200 and 800 units each month. That's going to give us somewhere between $450 and $1,800 profit each month. This is not something that I can retire off of, but I have loved this project and I have loved putting this video together. So if you have found this helpful or interesting in any way and you'd like to see a follow-up video of how much I made and how long it took to break even off this, I would love to create that. So feel free to give me a like and a subscribe because it really helps me to convince my wife that this is not a waste of time.